This morning, what do a wildly popular teen romance series, a quirky Broadway hit, and a presidential candidate all have in common? They're all connected to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What's real, what's myth, and what is fair game? Plus, the problem with the truth in politics, the dangers of saying what you actually believe. And Sunshine Showdown, defiance in Florida many times over, and the continuing battle over who can vote. But first, if you believe America is the most exceptional country on earth, you're probably an American. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. Good morning. I'm Melissa Harris Perry. Attorney General Eric Holder notified Congress last night that he's assigned 2 U.S. attorneys to lead criminal investigations into possible leaks of classified White House information. President Obama yesterday defended his administration against claims that it helped leak information to reporters on drone attacks, cyber attacks, and detention of suspected terrorists. And in Syria, a UN monitoring team has succeeded in capturing on video proof of the massacre of dozens of people there this week. Meantime, Reuters this morning reports another 17 people were killed overnight by shelling, and we'll have details on that in just a little bit. But now it's time for our top political story. Look, the past week for President Obama was like something out of a children's book. A series of unfortunate events. He was already smarting after last week's disappointing job numbers. Then the Obama campaign fundraising juggernaut was humbled by news that they'd been outstripped by Mitt Romney last month. Add to that Scott Walker's victory in the Wisconsin recall that had everyone questioning if President Obama could defend the White House in a battle where the rules of engagement seemed to have shifted. Meanwhile, former President Bill Clinton apparently forgot one of the rules of being a campaign surrogate. It's the one that says you don't directly contradict the position of your candidate and suggest that, Bush tax cuts should be extended when President Obama doesn't think they ought to. After days of playing defense, the president tried to shift to offense and get the last word of the week. So he showed up yesterday morning in the White House briefing room to talk about the economy. We all tuned in to see what he had to say about the American economy, except he talked a lot about someplace else.
Right now, one concern is Europe, which faces a threat of renewed recession as countries deal with a financial crisis. If there's less demand for our products in places like Paris or Madrid, it could mean less businesses or less business for manufacturers in places like Pittsburgh or Milwaukee. When
was the last time you heard an American president mention Pittsburgh and Milwaukee in the same sentence as, Paris and Madrid? It doesn't happen often because in America, we tend to think of ourselves as separate and apart from the rest of the world, separated by more than just vast oceans, but also set apart with a special history and mission. A shining city on the hill. Americans like to believe that we are exceptional. But here is President Obama complicating the story a bit. He's a patriot who reinforces our uniqueness, but yesterday the president admitted that we are interconnected, that when it comes to the economy, the fate of one is in fact tied to the fate of all. Now, of course, that's the kind of thinking that could get you voted out of the White House, because his rival, Mitt Romney, has cast an American exceptionalism that sees our country as not just apart, but above, as a litmus test for leadership.
We knew, without question, it was extraordinary, exceptional, and special to be American. Our president doesn't have the same feelings about American exceptionalism that we do.
From the time the Continental Congress first called our states united, American exceptionalism has served as our binding identity. It was a standard for America, even for those who criticized the country for its failure to live up to it. Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, Martin Luther King Jr. all relied on the idea of America as a special place, even as they pressed for change. Think of it as a kind of revolutionary narcissism. But now we are confronted with the reality that one of the special cornerstones upon which we have built the idea of America, that our exceptionalism is in part derived from our economic power, may be that we are just as ordinary as the rest of the world. Indeed, all of the bedrocks of our self-understanding, our singular political ideology, our national identity, our military might have shifted. And with them, our long-held beliefs about what makes us exceptional may be fading. which could be okay if it leads us to be more sober and tolerant, peaceful and global in our perspective of our place in the world. But divergent views on American exceptionalism may also sever the last threads of national identity that bind us together. Which is why this presidential election may be presenting us with more than the obvious decision, not just one between President Barack Obama and Governor Mitt Romney, but a choice to reimagine and redefine what makes us exceptional now. Joining me around the table, Anthea Butler, professor of religious studies and graduate chair of religion at the University of Pennsylvania; Raul Reyes, attorney and NBC Latino contributor; Dorian Warren, assistant professor of political science and international public affairs at Columbia University and fellow at the Roosevelt Institute; and Rick Newman, chief business correspondent for U.S. News and World Report, and also author of Rebounders: How Winners Pivot from Setback to Success, which we have talked about on this show. Thank you all so much for being here. So, American exceptionalism, particularly as it is rooted in the economy, are we still in a place where we can make a claim for the exceptional American economy?
I think what's happening now is we're basically redefining what it means to be American. I mean, we have gone from being on the top of the heap to there's this whole sense of decline. We don't really know where we're headed. I think what's different now is that this sense of American exceptionalism is actually something America earned throughout its history in many different ways. Throughout the 1800s and the Industrial Revolution, all those great companies that got built became the economic engine of the world. The 1900s, leadership in World War II especially, there was a lot of sacrifice associated with that, a lot of hard work and excellent leadership. We earned it. And now it seems like we have a sense of entitlement to it. So I think we have sort of drifted from something we earn to something we expect, and I think that's the problem.
I find that to be a really useful intervention. This idea that it's not bestowed on us, but that we earn it, and it does make me wonder even a little bit about our notion around taxes. This idea of shared sacrifice being part of how we determine that we are exceptional.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things with American exceptionalism is that embedded in it is this idea about individualism. Okay, so it's America is exceptional, but individuals are exceptional because they work hard and they're in America, all this stuff. Now, nobody wants to do the shared sacrifice of taxes because it's like, I'm individually exceptional, America exceptional. That doesn't translate into me giving money to everybody else to do something. So I think this is the place where that idea of exceptionalism is broken in a certain kind of way. I would be the first to say America is exceptional, but it's only exceptional to the case that it will try to work on its problems. And I think what you're saying here is really true, is that we've earned it, but we don't know how to keep it.
Well, I wouldn't say it's so much broken. I think that right now the concept of American exceptionalism, or Amex, you know.
Really, Amex? Isn't that also a credit card?
Broken, but I think it's being distorted because, I mean, I believe in it when you go back to what our founding fathers, how they separated us from Europe and the old world systems, what Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine wrote about. Those are the values that do make us exceptional. But what we see now, you know, like with Mr. Romney and other Republican candidates, they're promoting exceptionalism almost as our birthright, almost a type of jingoism that we're American, we're number one, and we're the greatest, just because.
You deserve to be special, and that's the end of it.
But it's also a demarcation point. They're usually racially, too. Exceptionalism means this is this other kind of exceptionalism, and you know as well as I do, if you're immigrants or somebody from another country, you hold on to that because you want to be that exceptional person. But now what has happened with the Republicans, it's drawing a line. It's like white people are exceptional, and the rest of this really isn't exceptional. I feel like it's racially coded in some ways.
There's a different way in which we're exceptional as a country, and that is among all rich democracies. We have the highest levels of inequality, we have the weakest labor movement, and we are, of all rich democracies, the less mobile country now. You're more likely to stay in the station under which you were born today in America than out of any other advanced democracy. So people cannot move up the class ladder in this country like the myth of how that was. And it was the reality in the post-war period. But that time is over, and in that sense, we're no longer exceptional in terms of mobility.
And this is always sort of our two-sided angst around exceptionalism, right? Is that we are, particularly if we're sort of focusing here on the economy of American exceptionalism, we are the Horatio Alger story, right? And we are the story of American slavery, right? We're the story of wealth that is built on the backs of unpaid labor. At the same time that we're also, I mean, and both of them are true. It's not as though the narrative of slavery wipes away the story of Horatio Alger. But at this moment, our policies do seem to be wiping away the possibility of class mobility.
There's also an expectation that has developed over the last few years. We do have a welfare state. I mean, there is an expectation that the government can just sort of take care of you. I think this is why we're so discombobulated isolated right now because we're moving from one thing to another. It's a very uncomfortable shift. So there's no doubt we're moving into a time when the government is going to do less for people and it's going to ask more for people. That's just simple math of the budget. And the thing that is going to pull America out of this is more self-reliance by individuals. But they have not gotten the message yet, a lot of people haven't anyway, that you're on your own. And no politician is going to tell them that. So politicians are basically feeding a lie, especially during this campaign, that just some new policy in Washington will fix your problem.
Well, so
that's not going to happen.
Well, let me pause on this for a second, because this is really quite counter to what the president said yesterday. So yesterday he said, and this might be the thing that makes us exceptional relative to the European economic crisis, is that America actually has a political solution to our economic crisis. So he talked a little bit about the need to be spending at the state and local level. So if we have just a second, let's take a listen to that.
Where we're seeing weaknesses in our economy have to do with state and local government. Oftentimes, cuts initiated by governors or mayors who are not getting the kind of help that they have in the past from the federal government.
Right, so the story is there. Well, there is a solution. If we increase federal tax revenues, we push that money down to the states will go back to hiring, and then people can pull themselves up.
But I think we're at a point right now where there's a lot of, as you mentioned, this anxiety. In a certain sense, people are afraid. We're in an age of globalization, the age of terrorism, and an age in which the face of America is changing. And I think all those are underlying causes why we do have this sense of anxiety. Last month, Time magazine found that 71% of Americans thought our greatest days were behind us. So I think people are kind of reaching out for the notion of exceptionalism as something to hang on to, so as not to have to deal with our new reality.
That's not an exceptional attitude, by the way. That's a very defeatist attitude.
Right.
Well, and it's actually a very European attitude, right? It's the attitude of former great imperial empires. We are going to continue our conversation about American exceptionalism because there's a lot more to say. But before we do that, I'm going to address Finegate when we come back. I'm going to talk about President Obama's so-called gaffe when he talked in that economic speech yesterday about the private sector doing fine. I think he meant it, and I think a lot of times we need to hear politicians when they say what they say, they mean it. That's up next.